I'm Mark, and I'm sat in what's becoming the permaculture forest garden at Rockaway Park in Temple Cloud, Bristol. We try and utilise everything, so we hardly throw anything away. And if we've had to do this massive pruning on this oak tree that's in front of me, we'll end up using that wood to build something. We will not waste it. And likewise, anything that comes through, we'll find a way of using it. And like the metal drums that I was showing, we've cut, everything. We can always. I want the garden project to be, as much as anything, a sort of examples of what can be done with stuff that you're chucking away. It's all about the recycling for me. I've been obsessed with it all my life. In fact, Magnus, who was living here once a while back, he got a job singing with Hawkwind, and he was sitting here, we're doing this thing with Mike Batt, and everybody was somehow found this amusing, But I said, frankly, Mike Batt was one of the Wombles, and the Wombles recycled everything and made it into something new. And for people of my generation, they were a massive influence, And I thought, rather than feeling, it was funny because it was like a joke that you were doing this thing with Mike Batt, and I was thinking, but I think he was a bigger influence on us than Crass, probably, And that'd be the one that everybody asks you about, but in actual fact, the Wombles probably influenced us more.
My name's Laura, and I'm here at Rockaway helping with the various projects that they've got going on here. Yeah, it's an important connection with a green space and being involved in working with wildlife and just having it around you, simply having it in your vicinity is it's really good for the soul. And we want to try and help bring people out of their time in isolation when the restrictions lift a bit, and we can invite people to come here safely to participate or just to enjoy the views.
So at the beginning of the first lockdown, we've always had this footpath that ran through this field, and it's been underused, and you hardly ever saw anyone on it. But as lockdown kicked in, more and more people walking up and down, and we can see them from our kitchen window. And I've always thought that this is the best view in the whole place. There's a windmill straight ahead. It's just open. It's the only place where grass grows nicely, and it's got this awesome view. And I always thought it'd be a nice thing to put a bench here for the people that have suddenly taken to walking up and down footpaths, to sit and rest. It's quite a steep hill. It's just a great place to be. So the bench was an offcut of a huge piece of oak that somebody who'd had a unit here before had left. They basically cut the good planks off it, and this was the offcut, and I couldn't bear throwing anything away. So I'd put it to one side 5 or 6 years ago, and then obviously when the lockdown came, I showed it to Hannah, who's a wood carver who's been staying here for lockdown, and said, can we make this into a bench for the locals to sit on when they're walking up and down? And she's carved it all beautifully, as I'm sure you'll take pictures of. And it's been an absolute pleasure to watch everybody wander up and down, and I think it sort of meant that people have got to know each other more and acknowledge each other and realise that we're all connected and one thing and another. And it's great for us because as we're talking about, we're trying to introduce this forest garden project, and and we'd like the involvement of the community. We'd like everyone to feel like they can just hang out here if they want. And it's been like it's especially gratifying in the early evenings when you see kids out here and things like this, and you think they've had such a really tough time, a time that they should really be having the times of their lives, and instead they're trapped indoors with their mums and dads, and it's like really heartwarming to hear shouting and giggling coming from over here, in the early evening. Yeah, so basically this bit of land adjoins Rockaway, and it's on a very steep 45-degree slope, south facing. It couldn't be a better place for growing things, but it's obviously extremely difficult to work on. It's intersected by this footpath, which means that the public naturally have access to it all the time. And I think with starting this project, what we're trying to do is encourage people in. With a sort of, I envisage a selection of paths that all interweave and always give you separate directions. You can take choices continuously throughout, and maybe like separate gardens for separate little groups or joint projects, and people take a little bit of ownership of their own part of the garden. Hopefully, if people get involved, that would be a great thing, and whether you want to send us a plant or you want to send us a fiver, we won't waste it.
My name is Yotsi. This is Mehmet.
Is Mehmet from Turkey?
From Serbia originally, but it's been here been in Bristol for a few years. Known the Rockaway guys for maybe not the first Airbnb guys, but at the very start of it. We turned up here once with my wife, who I got married to here. So I had a couple of stories here already, and once came here with Mehmet for a Sunday roast, looked at the garden, looked like, there's loads we could do here, and then Mark asked us, when can we start? That's how it started.
Yeah, I came to England like 1.5 years ago and started to do gardening here.
Yeah, I'm a bit more new to permaculture or the whole gardening scene. I think it's only 1.5 years ago when I first discovered the local community orchard. I started volunteering, and that sort of brought me to a job in a city farm in Bristol. So I'm still learning all the gardening jobs and all the kind of permaculture ideas with the gardening. So that's the idea here, that we will try to implement these sort of principles.
When I very, very first came here and we ran it as a scrapyard, I in the back of my mind, if we'd wanted to run a scrapyard properly, we'd have bought a place in Avonmouth or somewhere where people could have got in and out of much easier, and this is a little bit inaccessible and a little bit off the beaten track, and so I always really knew that wasn't what we were going to do, and in the back of my mind I envisaged a situation where kids or adults with learning difficulties or anyone who felt like out of sorts or out of place could arrive in a minibus or whatever, come out of town, whatever, and they would park somewhere in this over here, and then they would walk up through this garden that we're building, through the house, into the yard, and somewhere along this journey they might see something that sparks something in them that's previously been unsparked. I don't have the right words for it, but we all know what it is. When you see that thing that they say, I'm not mad, I'm actually, somebody else feels the same as me. I can see maybe I could get into gardening, maybe I could get into woodwork, maybe I could get into metalwork, maybe I could think differently about all this. And so I think that's always driven me, this idea of doing that, because we have these places that when I was a kid we went to this place and you thought, wow, there's a whole possibility here that had never crossed my mind, and that's what I want to do really. And this garden project is the first part of it. I feel in order for it to make sense and in order for it to outlive me, it needs to self-sustain. It needs to be funded by itself. It needs to employ people. The people need to be paid. The people need to teach, and they need to be paid. And we need to be able to afford to teach people who can't afford to pay for a course. And And this is our first tentative foray into trying to get a bit of outside funding. So I've always been extremely reluctant to go to any government agency or anything like that and ask for money, because I feel like you'd be constricted by how they think you should behave and how they think you should do things, and I think how we do things, sort of strikes a chord with people, and they like the fact that we're a little bit anarchic and a little bit we don't have to ask for permission for everything, and it gets more done. More things get done, less meetings, more stuff getting done.
My name's Graham Burnett. I'm a permaculture teacher. I've been teaching permaculture for about 20 years now, I suppose, something like that. And I ran a permaculture course at Rockaway Park in 2017, I think it was. I guess permaculture, the essence of permaculture really, it's an ethical system really, based around earth care, caring for the earth, the resources of this planet, the ecosystems, the other creatures and organisms we share this world with. It's about people care. How do we care for ourselves and each other and for future generations? And fair shares, which is really all about kind of resource distribution. There was that famous quote from Gandhi, there's enough for all of our needs, but not for all of our greed. So I guess it's about sustainable food production methods, how we grow our food, how we interact with the land, how we create shelter, like how we create our buildings, transport, energy use, community, all kinds of elements of what it is to be human and how we relate to this small planet we live on are encompassed, I think, by the ethics and principles of permaculture design.
My name's Marta, I'm Mark's partner. I co-run Rockaway with him, and I ran a vegan cafe here on site, and I love growing food. So my dream is to be able to grow some vegetables, hopefully, in our garden and be able to use it in the cafe. 0 miles food.
Maybe the ethics is like the people care, earth care and fair share, as like basically take care of the land and nature, and take care of the community, the people is involved as well. It's not only about producing vegetables or fruits, it's about the people as well. And fair share.
And I guess, yeah, fair share, I really like that, that concept of permaculture, because it's about, we don't just want to go and harvest all the fruit and harvest all the veg and whatever, take everything from nature and then expect it to produce it again next year and then after that again, so...
Leave some for the birds.
Leave some for the birds, leave some for the deer. And the deer comes and takes it anyway.
Much more for the deer,
yeah.
Outside.
Deer is not into permaculture.
Here a few years ago, this whole area, all the way going up to the house, was overgrown with bramble, and it was never cultivated before as a garden, and we started managing the bramble and cutting it down, sowing the grass, and managed to get it to the state that it is now. And I've started making little bigger beds for growing vegetables and fruit, and this is one of them. And the idea is to have it as a forest garden, as an edible forest, so to apply a no-dig method, but also try and grow some perennials and edibles that we can use and eat. It's mainly perennials, so there's a few fruit trees, an apple tree, a pear tree, some figs, some berries, some globe artichokes, got perennials as well, some garlic and onions still from last year that will be able to grow again.
Part of what we've got with having what used to be a scrapyard facility next door was the Environment Agency, in the interests of the environment, made us concrete nearly all of it. So we amassed tons and tons of water on this newly laid concrete. And on top of that, we have the water that's coming out of the sewage treatment plant, which is clear enough to pump into a river, but we don't have a river to pump it into. So we're working to sort of pump the water over here and let it percolate through what eventually will be the garden. That's a bit of an oversimplification of it, but yeah, with the being on a south-facing slope and having a plentiful supply of water is ideal conditions to be growing. I know it looks a bit like devastated at the moment, but we had a huge weeping ash tree just here, and we had some tree surgeons come in a couple of weeks ago to look at pruning a few branches off the trees that are overhanging the house, but they noticed that the ash had ash dieback and said this is going to have to come down like more or less straight away. So we got all this carnage of the ash tree. While they were here, we were remarking on how wonderful this oak tree looked over here, and then 2 or 3 days later we noticed it had this massive split in it, and we had to pollard it drastically to save it, basically. But I think it's all right now, but obviously we've got quite a lot of mess to clear up, or quite a lot of material to make things with.
This area here we terraced a few years ago using dry stone walling, as you can see, and these beds have been used for growing annual edible crops like salad leaves, beetroots, pak choy, tomatoes. Over the years I got more and more interested in a permaculture approach to gardening, which is as natural as possible without using chemicals or turning over the soil. The idea is that the nature looks after itself if it has a chance to be left alone. Companion planting is quite important in permaculture, so just choosing the right plants that grow together benefit from growing together. So there's no need for human intervention in terms of dealing with pests or bugs or diseases. I really love to develop on the side as a more sustainable way of growing food, and also create a space where people from the local community are able to enjoy it as well, either just like a little respite on their daily walk on their footpath, or just a little piece of quiet and maybe a inspiration. Also, if they want to get involved and do something with other people in the community, we'd like to provide that platform and space.
We've got something like 20 or 25 units of people working in them currently, and these will be, we've got jewellery makers and metal workers, we've got a blacksmith, we've got wood, people working in wood, people working in glass. We've got the caterer inside the vegan cafe, that we've got the rehearsal space. We've got a lot of very talented people who could be sharing their skills with other people, and and it would maybe give them a day's work a week or whatever to run a course in their particular specialism or whatever. Throw that out to the rest of the world, and if you've got something that you can share with somebody else, perhaps you're retired, or perhaps you might kicking your heels, but you've got some amazing skill that people would be glad to learn. And I think even at the moment, even just the process of bringing people together so they're not so scared of each other anymore after spending so long sat in a room on your own, it's going to be difficult for people to come out and just talk to other people. We've not seen other people for a year now. It's going to take a lot of fixing, and also there's I feel a massive passion, a massive yearning for something different, that we've all learned that to live without the life we had before, and we've all seen a lot of negatives in that, and we've all seen a lot of positives in that, and I think there's a massive appetite to learn about alternative ways of doing things or alternative ways of living, and it'd be great for people to be able to access that somehow, because I'd imagine it's quite a daunting thing if you're sort of sat on a housing estate in the middle of Nuneaton or somewhere, and you've got no one can point you in the right direction where you can meet, and I'd like to have that sort of open house sort of policy where people can come and find something that appeals to them.
In 6 months' time, hopefully a few more fruit trees growing. They're gonna be only small, so looking from this spot, maybe the landscape won't be that much different. Hopefully we have dug a path through the whole slope, so this can be a bit more accessible because it's very steep. By in year's time, like it, see more trees, definitely.
Yeah, it will take time. It's like season by season it will develop. It's more than months.
No, obviously the major expenses always is going to be with people, but then with money we can go and buy big sacks of compost. We can buy the trees. We can buy the plants. People could contribute. This is another thing. We don't necessarily need to have money. Maybe you've got some plant that you've got grows really well where you are. You think it might suit this environment. Maybe you could just wrap it up in a cardboard tube and post it to us. This, at any level of or maybe just come out and pick up a thrasher and cut a few brambles down. So if you sat at home and you're not wondering what to do, come and have a go. Come and help.
So what is it about the nature of Rockaway Park that lends itself to a project like this? Well, there's so many benefits really. They really fit under all the stuff that we talk about in permaculture. There's all those environmental benefits, improving biodiversity, restoring local ecosystems, all the educational opportunities, experiential learning out in those natural ecosystems, learning about sustainable design in practice, traditional skills, tree care, pruning, grafting, and it's great for children to be taught. They can be taught the core subjects using that kind of forest garden or permaculture or community garden environment. Loads of health and well-being benefits, of course. Very therapeutic, just being out in the open air, interacting with other people, especially as we kind of come out of this period where we've all been kind of rather isolated from each other. It's going to be really nice for people to kind of come together again, I think. I think it could be economic opportunities, producing crafts, trading produce, making jams, all that kind of stuff that can bring in an income. And of course community development, as I've already said, which I think is probably the key thing there really. Yeah, just so many great things about it. I think it's a wonderful opportunity and can't wait to visit.